Hello, everyone. I am Joey Dowd, creator of New Territory Media, and thank you for joining me on a special broadcast that I'm going to do. So, this kind of came up a little bit impromptu, obviously, a little bit craziness happening in the world right now. A lot of conferences, pretty much every conference, getting canceled or postponed. I was going to speak at a few and attend a few different ones, and they've either been postponed or searching for live options. And somewhat ironically, I was going to be talking about video. So I thought I would take some of the material I was going to talk about and also some other stuff that I know and apply it to how to do a virtual event, a virtual conference, whether you are planning on doing it or whether you are looking to do one right now. Let me just say, if you were planning to do a in-person conference and things have drastically changed, first off, I'm very sorry. I know how much work goes into these events, and it's definitely not your first choice to have to do something online. But I think there's a lot of good options out there to capture the spirit and the message of what you did want to come across and what you were trying to convey, and a way to bring that into an online platform. So the way I'm going to do this talk today, and first off, if you have any questions, or if you want to join in on the conversation, you can leave a chat or send a message in the chat in the YouTube box, or on Twitter if you use the hashtag #NTMLive. I will be able to pull it in, hopefully using the software, to get your tweet on the screen and do my best to answer it. And so at the end, I'm going to have a bit of a Q&A. I already have a couple questions that were submitted, and I believe I kind of structured the talk around answering those questions as well beforehand. So let me kind of run through what I'm going to do during this talk. So my iPhone, how in a second, and it's a little glitchy. Okay, so I'm kind of going to run through this step by step as far as what a very basic workflow would be to stream either talks or panels or discussions. I'm going to try to cover most of the options that you would see for an online event, and kind of run through the workflow, and then with each step of the workflow, talk about different options and different ways to do it, all the way from very, very basic and very easy to a little bit more complicated and a little bit more expensive and higher budget. So on the left side over here, we've got our capture, and basically all the ways that we would capture and people's talks or people speaking. So presentations, and these can either be pre-recorded or done live. I'll talk about both options. Streaming off of phones, tablets, devices. So there's really, especially if you're organizing a bunch of speakers that might not be as tech literate as you might be, there's a bunch of different options for basically streaming off of any device, and I'll talk about what some of those options are. And then going up and streaming off of cameras, larger cameras, high definition cameras, or high-end cameras, and ways to connect that to your computer to stream off that. And so if you are doing a streaming thing, I'm going to talk about different ways to get that into your computer using encoders and different connection mixers and software. And then we'll have it in our computer, and I'll talk about different ways that you can edit the broadcast and make it look a little bit fancier and nicer using a couple of software options. And then lastly, I'll talk about platforms of what types of options there are, what types of streaming platforms there are for, back to my camera, what type of streaming platforms there are to broadcast your talk and how people can view it. All right, so let's start with the first section, so capture, so different ways to capture speakers, capture events. And so before I get into that, let me turn that on. And so before I get into that, take a step back, a larger step of looking at what your event, what you either want your event to be or what your event was structured to look like. If you think about a lot of events and conferences, they kind of have different formats and different goals. So a lot of conferences, it might be a not a top-down approach, but more of a lecture or a presentation where you have someone up on stage giving a PowerPoint presentation and a lot of people in the audience listening to that PowerPoint presentation. So online, that would be more of like a webinar type format. And then you might have your conference where you want a little bit where it's a smaller, or it's supposed to be more of a dialogue, more one-on-one, more conversational. And so you might want an option where people see each other face to face, and it's less of a webinar and more of a group chat or a group discussion, or your event could be a mixture of both. So just kind of keep those in mind when I'm going through the options, and as far as what your goals and what the structure that you're looking for your event to be, as far as what type of options you're looking for when I cover different streaming options and different platforms. So let us begin with how to get your presenters. So let's assume it's sort of a webinar format, or you're having your presenters. Your idea was your presenters are presenting from a PowerPoint or a keynote presentation, and they're going to be presenting it to the audience. So when you're doing a live event, two ways you could do that. You could either coordinate everyone to still have them run their presentation, do it live, or you can have them pre-record it and do their presentation, recording it on their computer, and then they send you the file, and then you host a live event, but you have a lot of pre-recorded events, and you can just play them in the broadcast. So benefits of that, a little bit less of a logistical thing to make sure everyone is free on the day, though if this was a reschedule, you would assume that everyone was already free in the day anyways. But also, like, if there's any tech issues, less likely for that. You're just less dependent on multiple people having perfect internet connection and perfect connectivity and perfect and being and not having any computer glitches. So pre-recording is a really good option, and then maybe having a MC that's live and sort of doing a back and forth, kind of introducing the different talks. You can also have the person that's doing the presentation join in for a live Q&A maybe after the presentation or something like that. So you can kind of mix elements of live and pre-recorded to make your stream go well. So as far as recording presentations, most of the presentation software has live recording options. So PowerPoint, Keynote, I'm not sure if Google Slides has it built in, but I'll talk about how you do that in a second. So most of these programs, they have a record feature. So they will turn on the microphone. Basically, the person goes into present mode and then just talks through their presentation, and the computer will record their slides and the screen along with their audio. So it's super, super simple, a super easy way to present and to have people that are maybe not as tech literate run through their slides and talk through it and present and record the file. Another option is using Loom, and so I love Loom. It is super easy. It is basically a Chrome plugin, and I realize it's ironic that I'm in Safari right now, but it's a Chrome plugin that will record your screen, but it will also turn on the webcam and record a picture-in-picture effect. So you can see down here in the corner, it'll create a little bubble, and so you can see this person speaking. So it's a little bit nicer where you're not just looking at slides, you are having a little bit of that human connection and that human interaction. And sorry, just checking on the feed. I'm going to cover later on why you should have multiple people helping you run your live stream. But in this case, it is just me. So I'm tech and MC and host right now. So I'm going to be bouncing around a little bit. So Loom is great and super easy, and it basically records and it creates a link of the recording. And as you can see up here, there are a handful of sites that have been doing special deals and special access for COVID-19. So Loom, they've extended their Pro plan, and they've removed some of the recording limits on their free plan. So another benefit, especially if you're scrambling right now to do a live event that you weren't planning on doing. So now we're talking about, so this is kind of the way where you could have the speaker record their talk beforehand and send the file. The other advantage of this is when you do broadcast it on your live event, and I'll talk about options of broadcasting it later. When you do broadcast it, now the speaker is free to moderate the chat, and they can be involved in the chat and answer questions, which is sort of impossible to do when you are presenting. You can't really interact with the chat that much if you're in presenting mode. So pre-recording it, they can interact with the chat, so it kind of adds an extra layer of real-time Q&A while they are presenting. So pre-recorded options. Okay, so let's talk about actually capturing video. If you do want to do something like I'm doing right now and stream live via a video camera. So going back to I'm gonna have to switch. I'll explain why my setup's a little weird in a second. It'll make sense. So we had our pre-record option over here. And now let's say we want to do a real camera and feed it into our computer. So we need a device like this to connect our camera to our computer to get that video feed going. So coming back to our hardware and our link. So this is CamLink. This is probably one of the least expensive and easiest ways to plug in a camera into your computer. As you can see, it's literally a USB port on one end and an HDMI port on the other end. So you plug it in and it connects your camera to your computer. I've not actually used this one. I will tell you the one that I use in a second. But this is a really good option and very affordable option to do. Next up, we've got, so this is what I use. This is the Blackmagic Web Presenter. Blackmagic has a newer device that I would highly recommend more than this one. This one is more expensive than the newer device and has less functions than their newer device. But that's because this has a pro connection for SDI, which I am not using, and most cameras, prosumer cameras do not use. You're more interested in HDMI connection. And also, this device only converts to 720 HD instead of the full HD of 1080. So right now I'm streaming, even though my broadcast is in 1080, my video camera that is coming through is only at 720. But it is streaming on the internet, so it really does not matter that much. I'm sure it looks pixelated and live streamy pixelated to you right now. But just something to kind of keep in mind. This is also an older device that's been around for a couple of years. But the beauty of this device and what's really great about it is super simple. And I can't say, as I don't know, because I've never used CamLink, I don't know if it does this. But with the Blackmagic Web Presenter, I plug my camera into the box, plug the box into the computer, and it shows up as a webcam. So like when you're going to Zoom or you're doing any type of video chat and you're trying to select your camera and it has your like webcam listed, this shows up as a webcam. So it's extremely simple. There's really no software to deal with. And it's a very easy way to connect the camera and also add a little bit of controls. And so you can actually connect two sources. And that's why I've had to switch, and I've been switching between going to the wide shot to switch to my iPad, because I have my iPad plugged into the second source. And as you can see here, there's a 1-2 button. I'll show you in a second of what that looks like and what I'm talking about. Now the newer device that I like a lot more is the Blackmagic. I'm going to call it ATEM Mini or ATEM Mini. I'm actually not sure how you pronounce it. So this is a mini version of their live mixer that they make, and this came out in the middle of last year. And this can take 4 sources. It only does HDMI, but for most uses, that's pretty much all we care about and all we need. And it has built-in effects where you can do the picture-in-picture effects, is sort of what I have here up on screen. You can plug in other sources. So like in this case, I wouldn't have to do all the crazy switching. I could plug in my iPad. I could plug in 2 other cameras. I could plug in another microphone. Actually, my microphone is running through the Blackmagic device. I'll show you in a second. So you have a bunch of options here. So if you were looking for a device and a mixer device, I would recommend this one from Blackmagic over the other one. But also, keep in mind, CamLink, super easy to use. I'll jump ahead in a sec, because there also is a way to stream. If you wanted to do something, say you wanted to be the moderator and have a panel of different people coming in from different sources, that gets into more of the software aspect of the broadcasting software that I'll talk about in a second. But just to highlight, there is a way we can also use your cell phones as a recording device. So I am streaming off my cell phone right now, which is a second, I'm using it as a second camera in Wirecast, which I'm using to broadcast the software, which you can sort of see right here. And I'll kind of give you a peek at the setup that I have going right now. So I've got a camera up here, which is connected to the Blackmagic device down here. Got a light. I've got a boom microphone, which is a bit of overkill, but it's what I have available. from just recording video. And that's running into the Blackmagic device, and that's all running into the computer. And then I've got a Stream Deck to help me switch some of the camera rolls. This is extremely helpful for live broadcasting solo. And the reason the sound probably sounds a lot better is because I'm not using the, I'm not using the sound on this device. I'm still using the sound on my microphone. However, in normal situations, you can use the sound on this device. So let me switch back. Thank you, cell phone. So I'll get into a little bit of what software you can use to do that, but there's a bunch of options. And so also just to highlight, you don't need a high-end camera. You can stream off iPads, cell phones, tablets, all sorts of devices, and you can bring multiple people in to the same stream. All right. Mentioned the Stream Deck. I wanted to highlight. So I just have with the iPad, I just have a regular HDMI connection. The Lightning to HDMI connection, and that's just being plugged in to my Blackmagic device and coming in as a separate source. But if you, I just wanted to highlight it as another way where if you did have a presenter, or you were presenting and you wanted to be able to draw on screen, you can bring in your iPad as well as its own source, so you can draw on stuff. Okay. Now let's talk. Actually. So we're talking about capturing different options and different ways to capture. And so let's talk about going into the computer and how to edit this all together into a live broadcast to make it look good and cool effects. Speaking of cool effects, which I forgot to bring up, I'm going to turn on this scroll, which is now not scrolling. That's coming for later. All right. Well, it's supposed to be a little scrolling lower third, but that is not scrolling. All right. Well, tech issues. Okay, so anyways, the scroll thing was going to say use the hashtag NTM Live if you have any questions to ask on Twitter, which I'll pull up, which that is working. And also all of the show notes here are going to be in newterritory.media/virtual-events. It was easier if you saw it on screen, but I can't bring it up right now. Afterwards, I will bring up the website. Okay, so now let's talk about mixing this whole thing together into a broadcasted editing platform. So there are a couple options. Most of the solutions are going to be software-based. However, some of them, there are a couple of new online-based live broadcasting options. So what does that mean? Basically, let me bring up my 2UP here. Okay. So Ecamm is one option. I have not used this one, but this one seems actually very, has a lot of features and is very, very interesting. So it's a online broadcasting studio. So you just load up the website. You don't have to download any software, but it does a lot of things that broadcasting software like Wirecast that I'm using does, where you can load in videos. You can add in overlays. It can connect with some of the streaming platforms like Facebook Live and YouTube Live to bring in comments and reactions and chats. As you can see here, you can connect it with Skype, and so you can do sort of a moderated panel thing. And so yeah, it just seems, I've not used it, but it seems like it has like a lot of really good features and is very affordable. And so that is one online option, so software free option. Another one that I've used that it was pretty good, slightly basic in its features, but very simple to use is b.live. And so as you can see here, it's another website-based based platform where you can curate your live stream and do add some titles and add a couple of speakers. I don't believe BeLive lets you pull in outside files. So if you're doing any pre-recorded speakers and stuff like that, I don't think BeLive will be able to do that. But Ecamm does seem to be able to do that. I'm not sure if there's any limits or anything. Okay, so moving on from software-based options to, so moving on from online-based options to software-based options, so something that you download. The main one that is free and extremely popular is OBS, Open Broadcaster Software. So this is completely free. It works on Mac and PC. The downside is it's not as user-friendly. It takes a little bit of getting used to figure out how it works. But it's extremely powerful. You can do a lot of stuff with it. It's just, it doesn't have as many templates, doesn't have as many drag and drop type features that you're going to find in the paid software options out there. But it's free. A lot of people use it. It's really good. A couple of other software options. So now I'm a Mac user, and there are way less options for Mac users. They're mostly PC options. A lot of the streaming software kind of is targeted for gamers and gaming streaming, and so that's much more of a PC world. So vMix is an option. I'm just going to kind of mention these off, and these will all be linked in the show notes, either in the description here below or also on the website. XSplit, another PC-only option, but another popular option. VidBlaster X. And let's see. Oh, Wirecast. Sorry, I was looking at my notes simultaneously. Okay, so Wirecast is very, very cool. I am a big fan of it. As I kind of showed, it's got tons of ways you can bring in. You could bring in multiple feeds. And when I say that, it has a feature called Rendezvous, where you just send a link to another person, and it's as simple as basically like a Zoom chat. They just click the link and it loads up. They can either load it up on their phone, on their computer, and then on your end as like the Wirecast broadcaster and host, it just appears as another camera source. So it's super simple, and you can just manipulate that camera source however you want. You see the layout I have now, where I kind of have my screen cropped on the side and the computer screen up. So, I mean, imagine a 2x2 or a whole, like a news broadcast where you have 4 people talking or 4 people displayed up at once. All of that control, all of that flexibility you can do in Wirecast. It has titles. It has a media library with backgrounds and effects. It has... it's got a lot of control. There's a couple things I kind of wish it did do. And with all of its templates, while it does have a lot of templates, their design is a bit dated. So you kind of got to do some finessing or search on your own to get some other designs, like this background that I've got up right now I made. I didn't really like their backgrounds. The other very cool thing that I like about Wirecast is it has an option to turn on a virtual camera. And what that means is the broadcast that you're making in Wirecast. And so normally, like right now I'm streaming to YouTube, I'm also recording this feed onto my computer. And so normally you broadcast it out to wherever on the internet, but it also has a virtual camera option. And basically that turns your Wirecast feed into a virtual web camera. So similar how I mentioned before the Blackmagic design, and I could plug that in and it would show up as a webcam. Same thing with Wirecast. So I can take all the stuff that I'm doing in Wirecast and I can send that out as a webcam. And why would that be important? If I was then hosting something on Zoom, but I wanted to have more of a professional look in on the hosting end of Zoom, I can mix it all into Wirecast and then send that feed out to Zoom. And so on Zoom, it's now a much more streamlined and a much nicer looking presentation that I'm sending out to Zoom and all the participants that are watching it. So that's another very cool feature with Wirecast that I don't believe the other software options can do. Tons of other features here. I'm not going to really go through all the Wirecast stuff, but it definitely has some of that most control over what you can do. Okay. So those are most of the software options. There is a sort of another one, but has an asterisk to it. That's Studio 6 from Vimeo/Livestream. I'll talk about that in a sec because the only way you can use that software is if you are streaming on Vimeo and pay for their streaming platform. So you can't really buy that software alone and use it alone. So I'm not really going to mention it in this software groupings. All right, now let's talk about live streaming platforms. So coming back, that didn't switch. Oh, oh, all right. So I got my beautiful sketch going on right here. Let me just erase that. So now we have captured everything. We've gone into our computer. We've turned it into a nice broadcast. And now where are we going to stream our broadcast? And so that's what we're going to talk about now, is where to stream everything. So the main live streaming platforms that you're probably familiar with, we've got YouTube Live, Facebook Live. Obviously, the social media networks have other live options like Instagram, LinkedIn, Periscope. There's no way to stream directly to Instagram Live. So you have to do that from a phone. So everything I talked about, like you can't send a Wirecast nice looking feed to a phone. However, in Wirecast, you can change your broadcast to be 9:16. So you can do a vertical broadcast in Wirecast. That would be useful to send out to Facebook if you are targeting a Facebook Live on cell phones, but you cannot send it to Instagram. LinkedIn Live is still in a limited beta, so you have to have special access with your account to use it. So it's not really an open platform quite yet, nor is it really designed for this. So the main areas that I've been seeing most of live events streaming on is YouTube Live and Facebook Live. And I'm going to talk about sort of streaming there in the sense of just streaming out into your streaming out onto these platforms. And then after that, I will talk about how to paywall and protect your live streams if you were not doing a free event and you did have paying attendees and you wanted to protect your live feed and sort of wall off your live feed. And also Zoom is going to be another major player in live streaming options. So YouTube Live, which I don't really have. There's not much of a display, an advertising page for YouTube Live. But basically, pretty much all the main platforms stream to YouTube Live. It shows up like a regular YouTube video. If you are watching this right now, you are familiar with YouTube Live. You can, all the protections that you have over a regular YouTube stream, you can apply to a YouTube Live feed, as far as making it unlisted, making it private, not making it public. That all applies. Same things can apply to YouTube Live. Same thing with Facebook Live. You can stream out to Facebook Live. Facebook Live, I mean, the nice thing about Facebook Live is you can also, if you already have a large group, if your conference was targeted at people with on a group, you can stream just to a group. You can stream just to your page. You can stream. There's a couple of different ways, that options of where you stream on Facebook Live. So that also does help as far as protecting and targeting where you do want to have your stream to go. And another, I didn't mention this before, but Twitch is also a huge live streaming player. Twitch is much more for gaming and gaming targets. So unless your conference, that's not where I wanted to go. So unless your conference was about, is gaming related, Twitch is not going to be the most appropriate place to stream your conference, most likely. I would say the biggest thing as far as where to stream your conference or what platform to use it on, whether you paywall it or not, is where is your audience ready and where are you mostly ready? So if you already have a big YouTube following, or if you have a big Facebook presence, that kind of might dictate what platform is best to go on. It's also a good idea to have backup streams. So, I mean, just in case sometimes you do have a technical issue with your stream, to have a backup option available is a good idea to do. Other options, besides the main big ones that I just talked about. So Vimeo is a little bit weird because there is Vimeo. and there is Livestream, which is owned by Vimeo. So Livestream is a live streaming company that was targeting much higher end live streams or larger production live streams. Vimeo bought them, but Vimeo does have its own live streaming option. So this is a way to stream on Vimeo, and then I'll talk about that in a second. You can restream it. I'll talk about restreaming in a second, but you can also restream to other live platforms, as they highlight here. And similar to how similar to how YouTube, where I'm streaming to a video and like that video can be embedded anywhere. Same thing with Vimeo. You can stream to a Vimeo player, and that player can be embedded anywhere. And here, this is the software I was talking about. So they do have their own live stream broadcasting software, and it is accessible to you if you are a member and are using Vimeo Pro. So the live streaming option is only available on Vimeo's Pro or business option. I'm sorry, here you go. Premium. It is available on their premium option, and then also on their Vimeo live stream option. And so you can dig in here. I'll have links below, but there's a couple of like technical differences and limits and more control over what the difference is between the Vimeo Premium live stream and the Vimeo live stream. So another option, and this would also be useful if you are going to be paywalling and protecting your feeds. I use Vimeo for membership platform sites where I'm hosting videos and I want it behind a paywall. I usually rely on Vimeo because it's a much cleaner look, and it's easier. I have like a lot more control over the actual video. So Vimeo's definitely shifted more towards a white label type platform, where you just want to have a nice looking video and you don't really want the whole network aspect that comes with YouTube. Next up, the big gorilla in the room is Zoom. So a lot of the questions that I got relating to chats and conversations and how to do like smaller group discussions, all of that can really be done in Zoom. So Zoom, I mean, they definitely gotten a lot of attention lately. Extremely solid group chat platform. But beyond that, they have a webinar plan and they have other options that can facilitate webinars and hosting live events. They have meeting rooms. I've seen Seth Godin's Akimbo Day, where they basically had a bunch of Zoom rooms, and you would pick what room you wanted to join, and that for your session. And that was how they kind of hosted this all-day event that was like a virtual conference type event. So key things that make Zoom unique is you can stream, as I said, so you can stream to a large group of people. So you could have all your attendees show up if you wanted some more of like a face-to-face thing. Sorry. You can have your attendees show up if you wanted more of a face-to-face thing. You can also go into a webinar mode, which is an additional thing, but as you can see here, the video webinar is more of a broadcasting approach. So you can still have, as you can see, 100 interactive video participants. So that's people on the screen. And then you could have 10,000 view only attendees. So if you just wanted people that are just watching, but attendees, I would have to check, but usually attendees means also they can join in on the live chat. You can ask polls, you can have discussions. The other cool thing, if you did have an event where you wanted more of a face-to-face, or it was supposed to have breakout sessions, Zoom does have breakout sessions. So you can have a large group thing going on, and then you can assign people to groups and they can go into their own little virtual room with a breakout session. So Zoom has a lot of things that are trying to mimic what happens in real life, as far as different group dynamics and different discussions. And they have a lot of those controls and a lot of those features built in. So it's extremely cool, and it's extremely interesting how people are using Zoom beyond just having group chat and group meetings. Nice coffee. Okay. And And as I said, in Wirecast, you can turn your feed into a virtual camera, and you could load that into Zoom. So if you wanted to have a nice looking presentation, or say you wanted to do a webinar and you're moderating a panel, and it might get a little messy to do it if your panel was attendees, you don't have as much control over switching whose video feed everyone can see. So you can kind of do that part in Wirecast and then send it out into Zoom for people to view and for the discussion and for the moderation. And Zoom's nice too because you can limit access through links. So it's a very low barrier way if you already have an attendee list, if you already have info on who you want to give access to, you can load that into Zoom and give only people that already paid access to the Zoom call. And so it kind of saves you from having to do extra website stuff, which I will talk about in a second. And then another option is Google Hangouts Enterprise, which is like Google Hangouts, but they have a cap of 250 participants and a live stream of up to 100,000 attendees. It's quite a lot of people. And that is actually, I believe, I have the link, but that is free for right now. They're giving free access to it right now because of COVID-19. So if you are interested in using Enterprise, Google Hangouts Enterprise, that is an option as well. Definitely, they do not have as many features that I mentioned as Zoom does. But like I said, you can turn your Wirecast into a webcam feed. So you could also load it up in Hangouts and do the same type of thing. Most of these things are going to have chats. They're going to have ways to raise your hand. I say that I'm actually not sure about Enterprise about Google Hangouts. But yeah, just wanted to mention this as another option. And then some other ones that I have not used, but these are also live streaming platforms that are a little bit more white label. So Dotcast is another option. And I'll have a link about this below. Wowza is another streaming option. And Brightcove does have, they're a bit more of a white label video hosting, but they do have a live streaming option as well. Just wanted to point these out there. These are options. I've not used them personally, but Brightcove's pretty big. But yeah, that exists. And so I mentioned this earlier. So Restream is another big thing. So this more applies if your conference is free or you want to get it out or stream part of your event to as many people as possible. Meaning, what if you want your event on Facebook Live and YouTube Live and Periscope and you want it all at once? Just so like no matter where people are, they could stream it on whatever platform. So when you're using a program like Wirecast, I can do that in Wirecast. I can set out multiple streams. However, that's going to be taxing my internet connection a lot more because I'm going to have to simultaneously stream to all of these feeds at once. So you can use a third-party service like Restream, where you stream your stream to them, and then they use their bandwidth to split out and stream your feed simultaneously to the multiple platforms. And so Restream's probably the biggest one, and they advertise that they can stream to 30 different platforms. So they really have just one function, and that is to restream your stream to other platforms. But like I said, other services, so like Vimeo, they offer a restream option. So Zoom actually also does offer a restream option, so you can take your Zoom broadcast and broadcast it to YouTube Live and Facebook Live. And also Wirecast does have their own restream option as well. It's another paid add-on. But you can also use do the same restream function from within Wirecast. And so the main point of Restream, here they have a nice diagram that explains what restreaming is. So you just have to deal with having enough internet bandwidth for one connection, and then they use their bandwidth to stream it out simultaneously to all the other connections. Another thing that I'm going to highlight with Wirecast, but that is because they were the only place I could find. So captions. Captions, if you're running a live event, captions are going to be extremely important. to making your event as accessible as possible. And so you could always add captions after the fact with one of the many third-party services. But for live captions, Wirecast does have an add-on option as well that is automatic speech to text. So that's going to be using AI transcription. I don't know how good their quality is, but this was really the only option I could find where they had a straight up pricing model and offered an AI option for captioning live. Actually, I think PowerPoint has an option where it can attempt to caption your speech, like I mentioned earlier, where you're recording. It can do captioning live. I also don't know what the quality is of that. But they were the only ones that had their rates posted. There are live captioning services, but they were all quote based. So if you do need to have captioning, or if you do want to have captioning live for your event and not just after the fact, there are other websites, but you'd have to get a quote, and there wasn't anything that had as straightforward pricing as Wirecast does. Okay, so these are different options to stream your video and where to get your video hosted. Now let's talk about ways to paywall and protect your stream if this is a paid event or you want to protect access to your event. I'm just going to mention it because I've used this before and it's one of the simplest ways. But you could basically create a membership site or a paywalled site on WordPress using one of the many membership plugins out there. And you can embed these live feeds wherever you're streaming it. Like I said, you could stream it to YouTube and you can make YouTube unlisted. And so you can host that video on your webpage that is behind a paywall and that has restricted or member access only. So you can create that feed and embed it on your site and then just have access to it for members only, which is either people paid or you give them a code or whatever. So that's one very simple, very easy option to do. And when you're doing your feed, it's you can just set up one feed for your entire conference, or you can think about it like one feed per like room. Like if you had multiple sessions going on at the same time, you can have one feed per room. And basically, like I said, you could load in pre-recorded conferences, pre-recorded speeches, and then keep broadcasting out to just the same feed. So it would be the same video, and you wouldn't have to really change up much, or you wouldn't have to guide your people to go and find a different link or a different stream. They can just go to one page, look at the one stream, and chill out there for a lot of the day, watching the different talks and the different panels on this one page and this one stream. The other thing, so two other systems that are very much live, that are specifically focused for having live events or virtual events that kind of have all of the tools for moderation and interactions and dynamics. Crowdcast is probably one of the big ones. And they're a one-stop shop platform where they will handle streaming the video live. They can also restream the video. They can handle payments. They can handle managing access. So this is a good one-stop shop place if you don't really want to have to mess around with WordPress or building your own site or worry dealing with all the technical stuff of managing access. Crowdcast has the whole thing ready to go. And then another one is Hey Summit. So instead of calling it virtual events, they call it virtual online summits. And they offer some of the same features as far as managing access and billing and conversations, chats and stuff like that. However, they don't, as far as I can tell, they don't actually have the live streaming video platform. So you do need to stream your video to another platform. So like they have highlighted here, Vimeo, YouTube. You do have to stream it to them and then embed it on the site. My impression was that this does handle live events and it's not just for pre-recorded events. I might be wrong on that, but I've seen them used for some events. I just can't say that it was for live events. But they see here speaker dashboard, talk management, attendee registration. So it's a little bit of a one-stop shop similar to Crowdcast, but another option out there. Just want to give you options, different things you can use, different tools you can use. All right, so that's most of the technical stuff. Let me highlight some presenting tips that has come from different sources and stuff that I've encountered. A big source of this is from Ariel at Buffer, so I just want to give a shout out to her. And Buffer is in a 100% remote company, so if you're not familiar with them, they handle, you can schedule social media posts and manage all your social media accounts from their one dashboard and interface. And they've been 100% remote since their inception. So everyone there is a remote expert as far as etiquette and how to do meetings and events and stuff remote and virtually. And so she has a couple of good tips. I just want to give a shout out to her. So if you are a speaker, and so this one I actually pulled from some best practices from Zoom. So if you're a speaker, a couple things to keep in mind. Do a tech check beforehand. So that means checking your internet, finding a nice, fast internet connection. Hardwired, if available, is best. Also checking your sound, making sure that your sound and microphones work. Anything is better than nothing. So even if you're using AirPods, that's definitely, or just headphones with a microphone built in, that's better than not having anything at all. Make sure you're in a nice quiet space. So again, talking about sound, no fans, no noise. You might hear hums in my studio right now, which sort of defeats the purpose of what I'm saying. But yeah, make sure that there is got a nice quiet spot. Finding good light, that doesn't mean you have to buy a light, but just find a good spot to record, which means don't sit in front of a window so your head becomes a silhouette. And flip around, use the window to your advantage so the window illuminates your face. And also, even though we might be taking it easy right now at home, dress as if this was an in real life event. If you're the speaker, you're going to be on camera. You still want to not be in your PJs while you're presenting. If you're the organizer, so I kind of talked about this before, and these are some good tips from Ariel. Create some icebreaker questions and some polls. So especially if it's a webinar and you're on, people are on the chat area, but people aren't really seeing each other face to face. You can come up with a couple questions to get people engaged and talking in the chat area. Or a lot of the streaming options have poll features, so you can also create a poll to get people involved in interacting. As I alluded to earlier, have someone dedicated to focused on interacting with the chat. So that means they can be pulling out questions to ask to give to the presenter, answering questions within the chat. If the speaker is pre-recorded and they are in the chat, this is a cool way to have like a live Q&A with the speaker as they are presenting. And also encourage one screen per person. This is a little bit if you have a moderator or a host. Right now we all should be practicing social distancing, but if you are just happen to be in the same physical space as maybe multiple people like that we're going to be talking, it's a good way to, if you're in a multi-video, this applies more to less of the webinar and more of the group discussion. So let's say everyone is in a Zoom room. You wouldn't want to have two people in the same window chat. You kind of want to have everyone have their own screen and their own window. It sort of just levels the dynamics of the discussion. And if you are attending a session, just kind of make sure you mute all your notifications, and you kind of still want to give this the same attention as you would as if you were in the event in real life. All right, so let me talk about some of the questions that I got asked, and if you have any questions of your own, just leave them in the chat box or send them over via hashtag NTM Live. Let me pull this up. Okay, so this got cut off because it was a long tweet. But this was from Kathy. My organization was approved to host an annual autism conference online. We're looking at best tools to host 300 registrants to watch 3 to 4 panelists, all in different locations. Panelists will need to share slides. Not sure if attendees need to talk, but definitely need to chat. Also hoping to have a resource expo. Other orgs want to share services to attendees. A way to track attendees might also be required by funder. So I'm not sure about the last part. But okay, so with Kathy's thing, so part one, approved by funder. So a conference with 300 people watching 3 to 4 panelists in different locations. So a lot of that can be managed with Wirecast or one of the other live broadcasting software that I mentioned. So with Wirecast, with their rendezvous thing, I believe you could pull them up to 7 people from different devices. So that's an excellent option to bring in people from all over the place and organize the chat. You can also have someone editing and basically switching camera feeds to obviously whatever's appropriate as far as who's talking. And then you can, as far as having the chat and discussions, Zoom probably seems like the best option for that, but Zoom in a Zoom webinar format. So you can take that Wirecast feed, send it to Zoom, and then have people having a chat and a discussion in Zoom over the talk and the panel and the moderators. The other part of that, was the Resource Expo. So kind of that area that a lot of conferences have where sponsors and vendors have booths set up and they can talk and chat with people. So that's probably going to be the hardest thing to bring into an online space. Let me bring up that other, there we go. The Resource Expo. So that's probably going to be the hardest thing to bring into an online space. And with online events, some of it's going to require rethinking, maybe not finding a complete like one-to-one match of like, okay, we have this in real life person, we have this in real life. How do we like make the equivalent in an online space? Sometimes that might not be possible. And you might have to rethink. It's like, all right, well, what were we trying to achieve in that case? So, I mean, if sponsors were there, they want to be able to talk about what they can offer to the attendees and what they do. So that maybe what that looks like is in your live feed and in your live stream, having a couple of minutes for the sponsor to talk about what they do or for each vendor to talk about what they do. And then giving an option for people that are interested to either set up a meeting, a video call meeting, on Zoom via like Calendly or one of those scheduling programs where people can pick a time to talk with someone, or they could also just have their own Zoom room that people can click and access and jump into. So basically, the live feed's going on. The sponsor can talk for a couple of minutes, and then hey, if you're interested in learning more, click over on this link and join us in this Zoom room. And so basically, it kind of has that same dynamic of like stopping by a booth and talking, but you can kind of do it in a virtual space. So there's a couple options as far as getting people to interact with vendors and table sponsors, but it's not going to be the exact same equivalent as it is in real life. But this is a way to adapt and come up with new things, and maybe it'll work better. I mean, maybe now people, instead of hoping people walk by and wander, you can talk about it for a couple minutes in the feed that everyone's watching, and then people that are genuinely interested in learning more can go to the new space and interact. So other question that I got wasn't through Twitter, it was through Buffer's community. Rudolph's, we have a huge conference planned in Latvia with brands like Wish, Hugo Boss, Lego, Warner Music, but we are planning Plan B in case of the situation with virus gets much worse. In other words, we are considering to stream this conference online with virtual rooms. Is this something where I can share recommendations? So yes, and I kind of checked out their schedule, and they do. It's basically like my impressions from the schedule was like, hey, you have a big convention center, or you have a big conference hall, and there's someone on stage presenting to hundreds or thousands of people. So that would definitely be more of a webinar format. And so, like I mentioned, all those other options of Zoom or a Vimeo livecast or something behind a paywall to protect the access of the stream, but basically just one video stream and moderating between different speakers and different presenters, and going through with that. As far as the virtual rooms, Zoom probably is the best option because you can have breakout rooms, or you could just have kind of rooms that online, for lack of a better word, like online chat rooms, but they're video rooms where you that are sort of just live online, and your attendees can click on the links of whatever room they want to join or participate in, and sign on and have the chat. Yeah, again, it's sort of, you're trying. It's kind of like you want to take a step back and feel like what were the ultimate goals that we were trying to create here? Was it interaction? Was it people learning information? And how can you bring that into an online space, whether it's a one-to-one equivalent or whether it's we have to adapt into a new way of thinking of how to do it best. And yeah, that was, let me see, that was all the questions. So cool. And it's been about an hour, which is exactly what I planned for. So I'm glad that worked out. Thank you for watching. I'm going to do a follow-up. So each Wednesday I do a shorter live broadcast, about 10 minutes, of called Video Marketing Minute, where I just kind of talk about different one topic of either video marketing, video production, video SEO. So this Wednesday I'll do a follow-up if I see any more questions come along about live streaming or anything that people saw in this presentation that they wanted to know more about. So you can leave those questions in the comments here, or you can leave them on at newterritory.media, and check down in the show notes below for all the links to pretty much everything I've talked about, and more other links that I forgot to mention or just didn't have a link for at the current moment. Subscribe to the channel. Like I said, I do weekly show each Wednesday, and tune in this Wednesday for the next show. Stay safe out there. Keep your social distancing together. We will get through this, and we will get this annoying virus to bend the curve and wither away. All right. Have a great week.